So you're finally closed on your dream home and you move in and everything's great until one day you realize you just wish you checked those 5 things. In this video, we're going to go through the 5 things that you should check over and above any standard home inspection. Okay guys, so today we're going to go through the 5 things that you should be checking over and above a standard home inspection. Now, before we go into them, I just want to really cover off how important getting an inspection is when you're buying a home. I've seen it more and more, especially in low inventory markets, when buyers waive the home inspections to try and get that deal through above the other competition who's also trying to get that same home. Please, please, please don't do this. Any real estate agent that has your best interest at heart will be telling you not to waive the inspection. Although there are small things that you can waive within that, if it comes to that, don't waive the main inspection, because if you do, it's almost always going to come back to be something that you regret in the future. So let's just get that one out of the way. Now, the first thing that you should be looking at over and above a standard inspection is the sales history for that property. You should be looking in a lot of detail over the past 10 years, how many times that home has sold. You can even go further back than that. You can go 15 or 20 years, but you really want to be looking over the past decade, how many times has that home been sold? How many times has it been on the market? And how quickly did it sell when it went on the market? Is there a sign there that the homeowners were trying to get out? Is there something that could be wrong with that property that won't necessarily come up in an inspection? It could be anything. There could be anything wrong with that home that you can't see from 1 or 2 visits and an inspector can't see in a standard inspection. This could range from noisy neighbours with a barking dog all the way through to a railroad behind the property that you may not necessarily have seen, which has traffic coming through every morning at 6 a.m. It could be anything. Anything can go wrong. So what you really need to do is focus on that sales history and look for any irregular patterns and red flags. You want to look at that home and you want to see how many times it has sold over the last decade and then compare that to other local homes in the area. This should give you a good understanding as to whether there are any red flags that you need to dig a little bit deeper on that could save you a lot of pain and hassle in the future. The second thing that you should really be paying attention to that won't come up or won't necessarily come up in a standard home inspection is how that property behaves on a rainy day. Now, this is easier said than done. I appreciate that depending on where you are in the home buying process, you may not be able to schedule an additional visit on a rainy day. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be trying. Look at the weather forecast and try and have a look if there is an opportunity to get into that home on a rainy day. Because there are so many things that can happen, especially when it comes to how the water flows and how that's going to affect the property. It could be something as simple as waterlogging that you don't really want to deal with, but that could be fixed with a small fix like a French drain, or it could be something major that leads to basement flooding. And you won't know until you see that property on a rainy day. So if it is possible, I strongly suggest that you book another showing of that home on a rainy day. The third thing that you should be doing over and above any standard inspection is looking at those HVAC ducts. Now, your inspector should be looking at those ducts themselves, and they will identify any major issues. But I'm talking about going another step further. What you want to be doing is you want to be opening up those vents, sticking your hand in as far as you can, and having a feel around to see if there's any mold or any debris, anything that doesn't feel right. Mold can be a serious hazard to somebody's health. So if you can catch this early and identify that there are issues, you can potentially save yourself a lot of money down the road on improvements or renovations that you didn't need to make if you'd have seen them ahead of time. The fourth thing over and above a standard inspection that you should really be paying particular attention to is the condition of the windows. Now, the inspection is they are gonna raise any major issues with the windows. However, they're only going to go so far. You want to be going around and opening every window and making sure the mechanisms are working, making sure there aren't any significant cracks in there. This is something that's easily missed because people's attention are drawn to other features within the home, and the windows or the condition of the windows are often taken for granted. But it can be such an expensive renovation to get the entire house's windows replaced. So like I say, pay particular attention to those windows, look out for any cracks, look out for any imperfections that you think could potentially be major down the road, and just look at the general condition of those windows. And the final thing that you need to be doing over and above a standard inspection, you need to be getting out there, knocking on some doors and speaking to the neighbours. There are so many things that the neighbours can tell you that nobody else can. So make sure you're not wasting that opportunity. Normally, you're not going to see any issues, everything's going to be great, but you are going to see some red flags very quickly if something isn't right. So make sure you're getting out there, you're speaking to those neighbours, and you're just asking them about the neighbourhood in general, if there's anything you should be aware of, or there anything you should potentially be cautious of. And more often than not, they'll give you a very honest opinion that can save you thousands and thousands of dollars down the road if you've just spoken to them first. One example of when this has worked particularly well that really springs to mind is when I was working with a client and they were moving into a new build subdivision. They went and they knocked on, or we went and we knocked on the doors with the neighbours and just had a few conversations. And one of the most common complaints that we got from those neighbours was that there was issues with the air conditioning. In the summer, on the back rooms, the aircon just was not getting through. And it was such an issue that they had to pay thousands of dollars to get the air conditioning units replaced and the ductwork redone to fix this. We knew this ahead of time and we were able to renegotiate with the builders and get this fixed. So this is just one example of so many things that your new potential neighbours can tell you. It's a great opportunity, don't waste it, get knocking on some doors and get that feedback early. So that's it guys, they're the 5 things over and above any standard inspection that you should always be doing when you're thinking about buying a home. If you've got any more questions, either drop me a comment or send me a message and I'll get right back to you.